It is so nice to see all of you here, and this, just thinking about this has really inspired me. But I'm going to start with something a little different. I want you to identify those four faces you see before you. Okay, so somebody shout out, the top left-hand corner is? Yes. The top right-hand corner. Somebody said it, I think. I'll give you a little bit of a clue. There she blows. Yes. The lower left-hand corner? Yes, and the lower right hand. All right. Very nice. Oops. Now I needed to ask you one more question before going to the next slide. Which of those four people was not ever a librarian? Three of them were. So if you think it was Mao Zedong that was not, raise your hand. Okay. If you think it was Melville that was not, raise your hand. Okay. What about Golda Meir? What about J. Edgar Hoover? Was not. All right. Now we get to see the answers. Herman Melville was the one who was not a librarian, although his works were published by the Library of America. Today, I'm a teacher educator. I teach elementary ed. I teach a lot of inspiring and inspired folks to become teachers. And they mostly tell me, well, you know, I always played school. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I had this really wonderful teacher that inspired me. And I'm like, that wasn't me. That did not happen. I didn't want to be a teacher. I fell into it when I lost my computer operations job, and I went to before and after school computer instructor, and then I liked it. I liked the kids, and I decided that teaching was for me, but I wasn't, and I didn't have. I look back and I'm like, who inspired me? In elementary education, you know, I had a third grade teacher. I vividly remember right after Christmas, my brand new watch my dad gave me, and I'm sitting at my desk and all of a sudden I throw up. And she yelled at me, why didn't you go to the restroom, you know? Well, she surely wasn't my inspiration for being an educator. And then I thought, the one person who really made a difference was my librarian. My librarian, Edward Lujan, who is now 87, and he and his wife have established Latino America, a historical foundation in New Mexico. He's done amazing things. But it was him who really was my inspiration. But not at first. I remember being in library class and kind of talking to someone and goofing around and telling jokes. And he said, you're going to come in after school. And I said, after school? It was the only time, you know, I was usually a pretty good kid. I was kind of shy. And he said, yes, you're going to come after school. I said, no, I'll get in trouble, you know. He said, no, I'll talk to your mom. He says, I told your mom you were going to come in and help me. I didn't tell her you were in trouble. So I go in there expecting to write, I will never speak out in library again, 100 times. And he said, come here, I want to show you this. This is the Dewey Decimal System. This is what you can do with the library. This is how you can be a library helper. And I always wondered, how did he know? How did he know I needed that extra encouragement? I was the shy, weird kid, okay? I was really, you know, other teachers said, well, she sways back and forth and she does all this. You know, my mom's like, well, she's just different. She's just different. Ed Lujan showed me, my librarian showed me that it was okay to be different. And he showed me that my point of view and my purpose mattered. And that I had a purpose, and that it was okay to learn in a different way and a different style from the other students. We didn't have Common Core standards back then, but that Common Core standard right there, assess point of view and purpose. Ed Lujan taught it every day. He showed every child in that school building what their point of view could do and their purpose could do. And throughout time, librarians have shown us and have had high standards and have shown us what we need to do and how we need to teach. Without our historical librarians, we wouldn't be able to do any of these Common Core standards. Our, the Library Company of Philadelphia is still free and open to the public. And if it wasn't for the insight of Benjamin Franklin, we wouldn't have that today. This is driving me nuts. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm cutting in and out, but I'm not used to microphones in my face. I'm just going to do this, if that's okay. I still am an elementary school teacher at heart. I never stand still doing anything. So the Library of Congress was, he served as the Library of Congress from the Revolutionary War to the 1800, the Library Company of Philadelphia. He helped establish the importance of preserving primary sources, which none of us would be here in this kind of a conference if it weren't for primary sources and the wonderful work that they have done and the Primary Source Library of Congress grant. He informed us on how our government was first established. Those are standards, Common Core standards that we teach to today, that we would not have that ability to do otherwise. Melville Dewey. Without the Dewey Decimal System, we would not be able to help students find and locate materials. He worked as a student assistant in the library of Amherst College in 1873, and then went on to publish the Dewey Decimal Classification System in 1876. Beverly Cleary. How many of you know Beverly Cleary? Where are my elementary folks out there? Okay. Melville, although he wasn't a librarian and he was an author, but many authors have been librarians, including Beverly Cleary. Ramona, the Ramona series, my 22-year-old daughter still will get out her old Ramona books when she needs a little bit of comfort or has had a bad day, and she will read her Ramona books. But it was interesting. Beverly Cleary's story is she lived on a farm and grew up rather poor. But her mother insisted that the State Librarians Association bring books to the farm and to farm children in the rural areas. And so her love and passion of books started very early, and it just makes sense that she went on to be a librarian with her mother's encouragement. She attended the School of Librarianship at the University of Washington in Seattle and became a child's librarian before becoming a children's author. So who better than librarians to help meet the Common Core standards? There isn't. There's no better choice for me than to get the aid of a librarian. I remember when I was teaching third grade, I had a student, it was African American History Month, and she came up to me, very brilliant student, and said, you know, I love Martin Luther King, but we learn about him every year. Can we learn about Malcolm X? I've heard about Malcolm X, I want to learn about him. I said, okay, what do you want to know? Let's figure it out. I said, we go to library tomorrow, right? Instead of telling her about Malcolm X, I wanted her to discover about Malcolm X. I said, the librarian can help us find out everything we want to know about Malcolm X. And she went in, and the other kids, from that one student's comment, I decided, okay, all of you need to figure out who do you want to learn about this year. We'll still talk about Martin Luther King, but we'll talk about many other folks. And we were going to do that anyway. We had books in the classroom. And so from that discovery and from the librarians' help, these students were able to put together the concepts of pacifism and activism and the different things in between. And when these students that spring went to their field trip and had another group of students calling them the N-word that kids are always saying, and they came to me and said, did you hear what they said? I said, yes, I did. What is that? I brought them around me. I said, how does that make you feel? And they're like, well, one little boy's, I think we should go beat him up. But I know you would, but I'm not gonna, because I know that I'm better than that because you've taught me so. And I'm like, thank you. That's really good. I said, can we hold our heads high and get back to the bus? And we did that. I said, brought him back into the classroom. I said, let's talk about this some more. I said, what are you feeling now? Do you want to talk about this? They said, yes. They said, we want people to know what this is like. We want them to know what it's like. I said, well, what are we going to do about it? Little boy's like, well, it's too late to beat him up. I don't know what we can do about it. Another little girl, very, very shy, said, well, you know what? I think we can do something about it. She said, just like Martin Luther King, we could tell them. We could maybe do a speech or something like that. And I said, well, I know the district. Would you like to write a letter? So the class wrote a letter to the superintendent of the district. And that particular superintendent, thank heavens, wrote a nice letter back of apology and told the students that their letter was going to be read to every class in that district. And so, therefore, because of a discovery in the library, my students actually took that knowledge, those Common Core standards, to a very high level of activism and a high level of action. And so, it is our librarians who know reading skills, Common Core standards better than anybody else. It's our librarians that can help us meet them. We're all, as educators, as teachers and instructors, I feel we're all just spokes on a wheel, but I think that we must remember we're all educators and our librarians are at the center of that wheel, and they will keep us moving forward. Thank you.